The chamber was vast and silent, a monument to cold logic. Holographic stars, each representing a system in the galactic spiral arm, glowed in the air above a circular table. Around it sat the representatives of the Galactic Concord, the most advanced civilizations in this part of the galaxy. Their faces, where they had faces, were unreadable. The being known as Viral, its silver skin reflecting the starlight, spoke with a voice that held no emotion. The analysis is final. The swarm's advance along the Cygnus Reach cannot be halted with our current military distribution. To preserve our core systems, a strategic withdrawal is necessary. This necessitates the creation of a buffer zone. A map zoomed in on a remote sector. A single star system pulsed a soft, gentle blue. System L7-91, inhabited by a pre-warp species, the Lumin. Their technological development is negligible. Their strategic value is 0. By designating this sector a buffer zone, we force the swarm to expend resources occupying a low-yield system, slowing their advance by an estimated 5.3 standard cycles. This will give our fleets time to regroup at the nebula line. Another representative, a being of flowing water, contained in a shaped field, rippled. And the Lumin? Viral did not blink. They are a statistical necessity. The preservation of the trillion lives in the core worlds outweighs the loss of one isolated, undeveloped species. All protective fleets will be withdrawn immediately. Communications will be terminated. They will be left to their fate. It is the only logical course. There was no vote. Logic had already decided. One by one, the representatives gave subtle signs of agreement. A light dimmed here. A crystal chimed there. The decision was made. As the meeting dissolved, the star representing the Lumin system was quietly marked with a gray, passive symbol on the galactic maps. It was no longer a place. It was a sacrifice. Deep in the buffer zone, on the quiet world of the Lumin, the sky was a soft violet. Ethereal beings of gentle, bioluminescent light moved through forests of crystal trees that sang in the wind. They were a people of thought and memory, of art and deep connection to their world. They knew of the stars, but they had never sought to visit them. Their song was one of peace. Keeper Elo, a being of shifting amber and blue light, felt the change in the cosmic melody before the others. The quiet, reassuring hum of the Concord observers, a presence they had sensed for generations as a distant, protective rhythm suddenly stopped. It did not fade. It was severed. Then new signals arrived, not with words, but with cold intent. It was a galaxy-wide decree, broadcast on all frequencies. The Lumin, with their intuitive understanding of energy, perceived its meaning not through language, but through its emotional void, abandonment. A ripple of distress moved through the Lumin network. Confusion turned to a quiet, profound despair. They had not asked for much, only to exist, to sing their song. Now a great shadow was coming, and the chorus that had watched over them had fallen silent. Directed by Elo, they pooled their psychic energy, not to fight, but to cry out. A final, beautiful, hopeless song of their existence. A plea cast into the silent dark, not knowing if anyone would ever hear it. Far away, on the dusty, cold rock of deep listening post Epsilon 7, a human technician named Parkmina was drinking bitter coffee. The post was a backwater assignment, a place where Earth's fledgling interstellar government sent people to watch the quiet edges of Concord space. Her job was to monitor long-range sensors and file reports no one ever read. A chime, soft but persistent, echoed in the cramped control room. Mina frowned. It was a priority signal from the passive antenna array, the one pointed toward the so-called quiet zones. On her screen, a data stream unfolded. It was not Concord traffic. It was something else, a complex, modulated energy wave embedded with what her software flagged as potential patterned communication. And beneath that, raw, unfiltered, was something else. A feeling, sorrow, a deep, ringing loneliness that made the hairs on her arms stand up. She called up the visual. The source was a star system recently grayed out on the official Concord charts. A buffer zone. Her blood ran cold. She knew what that meant. Everyone in the service knew. It was a death sentence. Mina worked fast, enhancing the signal. She couldn't understand the patterns, but she could hear the emotion in the carrier wave. It was a dirge, a goodbye. She slammed her hand on the comms link to Earth Command. The face of her superior, a tired-looking man, appeared. "Sir, I have a Category Omega distress signal. Source L7 to 91, the Lumin system. It's a pre-warp species. The Concord has just declared it a buffer zone. They're broadcasting. It's like a psychic plea, sir. They're saying goodbye." Her superior sighed, rubbing his temples. "Commander Park, I've seen the Concord bulletins. L7 to 91 is a buffer zone. It's a tragedy, but it's Concord policy. It's not our jurisdiction. Our directive is non-interference in Concord strategic matters. Log the signal and continue your watch." "But, sir—" "Those are the orders, Commander," he said, his voice final. "We do not have the resources, nor the political capital, to challenge a Concord decree. We observe. We do not intervene." Park Mina out. The screen went dark. Mina sat in the silence of the outpost, the haunting, beautiful song of a dying race playing through the speakers. She thought of human history, of being small and afraid and looking up at a silent sky wondering if anyone was there. She thought of the countless times they had been alone. A fierce, hot anger rose in her chest. She was a soldier. Her oath was to protect life. She made a decision. She composed a tight beam message, not to Earth Command, but to one specific ship, one specific captain she knew would listen. She attached the raw Lumin signal and a single line of text. Asterisk, they turned away. They're singing their own funeral song. They don't have to. Asterisk, the message shot through the subspace relays, finding its target. On the bridge of the Guardian-class vessel Steadfast, Captain Lee Jun read the message. He played the audio. The sorrowful, melodic pulse filled the quiet bridge. His crew first officer Park Mina, who had sent it, Chief Medical Officer Kim Hana, Engineer Choi Day watched him. They had all seen the Concord decree. Jun was a quiet man, not given to grand speeches. He looked at the faces of his people, then at the star chart that showed the grayed-out system, a tiny, lonely light in a vast, uncaring dark. "The Concord has made its calculation," he said, his voice low. "They have decided these lives are an acceptable cost. A buffer." He paused, and when he spoke again, his words were like iron. "Humanity has never been good at accepting that kind of math. We remember what it is to be a cost. We remember what it is to be forgotten." He turned to his helm officer. "Plot a course for System L7 to 91, maximum safe speed." Commander Park Mina, the officer, not the technician, spoke up. "Captain, Earth Command will protest. The Concord will see it as a violation. We'll be on our own." "I know," Jun said, his eyes on the screen where the Lumin star now glowed, no longer gray, but a target. "But some lines you don't cross, and some songs you don't let end without an answer. Ready the ship. We're going into the buffer zone." The Steadfast, a ship built for patrol and peacekeeping, turned its nose away from the safe, lighted lanes of Concord space. Its engines flared blue as it punched into the faster-than-light stream. A single arrow shot into the deepening dark, heading toward a forgotten song. They had no grand plan, no great weapons. All they had was a refusal to turn away. The galaxy had turned its back. Humanity, for the first time on the galactic stage, was stepping forward to guard. The Steadfast slid out of the swirling blue tunnel of faster-than-light travel with a quiet shudder. Before them hung the world of the Lumin. On the main view screen, it was a marble of soft blues and gentle, shimmering greens wreathed in delicate silver clouds. It was beautiful, and it looked utterly peaceful. There were no orbital defense platforms, no fleet patrols, not even the haze of industrial activity. The silence on the bridge of the human ship was heavy. Captain Lee Jun leaned forward in his command chair, his face unreadable. Full sensor sweep. Let's see what we've come to. The data scrolled on secondary screens. No energy signatures beyond basic geothermal and the strange, low-level bio readings they detected from the distress calls. No weapon emissions. No ships rising to greet them or to challenge them. Commander Park Mina, standing at the tactical station, let out a slow breath. It's exactly as their broadcast suggested, Captain. A pre-warp culture. They have no spaceborne technology at all. They're just down there. Dr. Kim Hana moved closer to the view screen, her scientist's mind already whirring. The bioluminescent readings were like nothing in human databases, a gentle, rhythmic pulsation that seemed to cover the main continent. Their entire civilization appears to be in tune with their planetary ecology. It's not a city. It's more like a garden, a conscious garden. Open a channel on the frequency they used for their distress call, June ordered. Standard first contact package. Visual and audio. Keep it simple. Engineer Choi Dae, who had been monitoring the ship's strained engines from a console, muttered to himself. A garden. And the swarm are locusts. This won't be a fight. It'll be a meal. The message was sent. Minutes ticked by, marked only by the steady beep of the ship's systems. Then the main screen shifted. The image of the planet dissolved, replaced by a figure. The Lumin was unlike any alien humanity had formerly met in the Concord. It had a vaguely humanoid shape, but it was made of what seemed like shifting, translucent light. Colors flowed within its form-soft ambers, deep blues, specks of silver like distant stars. It had no discernible mouth, but when it spoke, its voice filled the bridge, not through the speakers, but seeming to form directly in their minds. It was a voice like wind through chimes, layered with profound sadness. We see you, travelers from the distant star. We felt your approach. You answer our song when the great chorus of the galaxy has fallen silent. We are the Lumin. I am Keeper Elo. June stood. Keeper Elo, I am Captain Lee Jun of the Earth vessel Steadfast. We received your calls. We are here to offer our assistance. The light within Elo pulsed slowly. Assistance? Your presence is a kindness, a final beautiful sound in our symphony. But your assistance? It is a gesture for which we have no score. The devourers come. Our world song will end. We are preparing for the quiet. Mina frowned. Preparing? You're not planning to resist? We have never known resistance, Elo's thought voice replied, gentle and firm. We know growth and memory and harmony. To resist is to create dissonance. We will sing our last notes together, and then we will become part of the great silence. We thank you for witnessing it. A cold knot tightened in June's stomach. They had raced here expecting a desperate fight for survival, a frantic collaboration. They had found acceptance of annihilation. Dr. Hana stepped forward, her voice gentle but urgent. Keeper Elo, my name is Kim Hana. I am a student of life. Your world, your song. It's magnificent. It shouldn't end. We can help you leave. We have room on our ship. We can take you to a safe world. The image of Elo seemed to soften further. You offer a rootless life. We are not like you, Dr. Kim Hana. Our bodies are of this soil, our light from these seas, our thoughts from the energy that flows in the crystal veins of our world. To lead is to fade, a slow extinguishing far more painful than a swift end. We are our world, and our world is us. We will not abandon each other. The finality in those words settled over the bridge. The plan, the only sane plan, was rejected. Choi Day slammed a hand lightly on his console. So that's it? We just watch? After coming all this way? June looked from the face of his engineer, etched with frustration, to the ethereal visage of Keeper Elo, radiant with calm despair. The silence stretched. Then he spoke, not to Elo, but to his crew, his words deliberate. They won't leave their home. He turned back to the screen. Keeper Elo, you will not leave your world. We understand this. So we will not ask you to. He paused, the new idea, reckless and huge, forming as he gave it voice. If you cannot come with us, then we will stay with you. Mina's head snapped toward him. Captain? Our orders were to assess and report. The Concord has abandoned this sector. If we stay, we are declaring ourselves outside of all treaties. Earth will be pressured. The swarm will come here. I am aware, Commander, June said, his eyes still on Elo. But our orders also contain a core directive, to preserve life where we find it, without causing harm. Walking away from this life causes harm. To us, he addressed his crew. The Concord turned away. They calculated these lives as a cost. Humans have always been bad at math when it comes to that particular equation. We are staying, not to evacuate the Lumin, to defend their planet. A flicker of something not hope, but profound confusion passed through Elo's form. Defend? How? With your one ship? You are a single brave note against a crushing silence. Now Choi Day grinned, a fierce, wild thing. He started calling up schematics on his data slate. One ship, yeah. But we're a tough note. And we're not just musicians, we're engineers. We don't have Concord energy lances or gravity shears. We have kinetic impactors, old-fashioned tungsten rods. We have fusion warheads. We have point defense cannons that fire 1,000 rounds a second. We have metal and grit and a lot of very stubborn ideas. Hana joined in, her scientific mind latching onto the problem. The Lumin are tied to the planet's geothermic and bioelectric energy grid. We can use that. We can pattern our sensor nets to their natural emissions, making them harder to detect. We can position defenses in harmony with their life flow, not against it. Mina, after a long moment, gave a sharp, decisive nod. The tactician in her was now engaged. The swarm expects no resistance. Their initial probes will be light scouting. We can set a trap. Use the Steadfast as a visible lure in high orbit, while we build hidden gun emplacements on the moons and the largest asteroid. Hit them from angles they won't expect. June looked at his team, a fierce pride warming the cold dread in his chest. He turned back to Elo. You prepare your song, Keeper. Let us prepare our shield. We will not ask you to fight. We ask you to trust us, and to show us the places where your world is most vulnerable, so we can protect them. Elo was silent for a long time. The colors within its form swirled in complex, unreadable patterns. The concept of organized, violent defense was alien, almost a blasphemy against their nature. Yet, the human offering was not one of conquest or imposition. It was one of standing beside. A shared fate. You would bind your song to ours? Elo finally asked, knowing it will almost certainly end in the same silence. Our songs are already bound, June replied quietly. We heard yours across the dark. That changed us. Now let our song change the ending. On the planet below, in a clearing of glowing crystal trees, the physical form of Keeper Elo reached out a hand of light toward the tiny, stubborn star that was the steadfast in its sky. A silent decision was made. "Then we will show you." Elo's voice echoed in their minds, now carrying a new, fragile thread of something not yet named. "We will show you the heart of our world and the places where it is thin. We will trust you, humans. We will add your strange, bold melody to our final chorus." On the bridge, the work began. Choi Day started barking orders to his engineering teams, talking about digging in and making a proper fortress. Hana was already compiling a list of questions about Lumin biology and planetary energy nodes. Mina pulled up tactical maps of the star system. Her fingers flying. Captain Lee Jun sat back in his chair, watching the beautiful, doomed planet below. It was no longer just a planet. It was now a commitment. A line in the cosmic sand, drawn not by a powerful federation, but by one ship full of people who remembered what it was to be small and scared and forgotten. They would not turn away. The covenant, silent and solemn, was forged. The next 3 weeks were a blur of exhausting, desperate work. On the bridge of the Steadfast, Commander Park Mina felt the strain in her shoulders and saw it in the faces of her crew. They were operating on two kinds of time: the slow, careful rhythm of the Lumin world below, and the frantic, ticking clock counting down to the swarm's arrival. Her initial plan was taking shape, but it was a patchwork thing. The Steadfast herself was the centerpiece, the obvious target. They had moved her into a high, stable orbit, her hull scarred from their journey, but her weapons systems humming. Around her, like a cloud of metal bees, floated a swarm of autonomous drones, simple human-made units designed for repair and light construction. Choi Day and his engineers had hastily fitted them with small missile racks and laser cutters. They were not powerful, but there were many of them. The real work was happening elsewhere. On the airless gray moon below, teams in bulky environment suits worked under the glare of portable lights. They were installing heavy kinetic cannons, barrels aimed at the predicted approach vectors. The cannons were old, pulled from a mothballed human defense station. They fired solid slugs at a fraction of light speed. No fancy energy beams, just brute force. On a larger asteroid, they had hidden a cluster of nuclear-tipped missiles behind a ridge of rock. It was a messy, human solution. Mina approved. Down on the planet, things were different. Dr. Kim Hana moved through the Lumin's world with a sense of awe she had to constantly push aside. There were no cities, only gatherings of light. The Lumin lived in harmony with towering crystalline trees that pulsed with a soft internal glow. They communicated through shifting patterns of color and direct, gentle thoughts. They showed her the thin places where the planet's vibrant life energy was most delicate, where a wound would bleed the world's light away. With Keeper Elo as her guide, Hannah mapped these points. She then worked with Choi Day's teams to place small, carefully shielded shield generators at these locations. The generators were human technology, but their placement was Lumin. They did not scar the landscape. They were tucked into crystal crevices, half buried in the soft, glowing moss, designed to activate and create a protective dome only when a direct threat was detected. "The swarm will come for the life energy," Hana explained to June during a report. "They are consumers. They will target these concentrated nodes first. Our shields will force them to focus on the harder, more fortified targets in orbit. We are redirecting their hunger." June nodded, looking at the holographic map of the planet, now dotted with soft blue shield markers and hard red weapon emplacements. "And the Lumin? How are they handling this?" Hana smiled faintly. "They are confused by our violence, but they understand protection. They see us building a thorny shell around their flower. It is not their way, but they accept it as our way of singing. They are teaching me about their connection to the planet. It is more than biological. It is a psychic network, a conscious energy field. On the other side of the galaxy, Ambassador Yu Jin sat in a sterile Concord briefing chamber. The holographic report from the buffer zone played out before the assembled subcommittee. It showed the Steadfast in orbit, the activity on the moon. The Concord official, a willowy being with silver skin named Verl, gestured dismissively. A single human vessel engaging in meaningless fortification. They are digging a grave and calling it a trench. The swarm probes will erase this effort in moments. A tragic waste of a ship and its crew. Yu Jin kept her face calm. They are not wasting their lives. They are choosing their principle. They are demonstrating that the calculus of acceptable loss is not the only mathematics. Vorl's large, dark eyes blinked slowly. Principle is a luxury for those who do not bear the responsibility for trillions of lives. Their demonstration will be a brief flicker. The swarm advance continues on 3 other fronts. This changes nothing. But later, in the quiet social spaces of the Concord diplomatic hub, Yu Jin found others watching the feed. A young tech specialist from the avian silix, her feathers ruffled with emotion. A philosophical Grent, whose mossy form shifted with curiosity. They did not speak to her openly, not yet. But they watched. The image of the lone human ship, guarding a world everyone else had written off, was a powerful one. It was a quiet seed, planted in sterile ground. The alarm screamed through the Steadfast. Mina's head snapped up. Contact. Multiple small signatures, emerging from faster than light at the system's edge. Swarm probe cluster, exactly as predicted. 24 contacts. Heading directly for the planet. Captain Lee Jun stood up. All stations, battle readiness. Activate the planetary shield network at vulnerable nodes only. Do not reveal the moon batteries or the asteroid nest. Let them see only the ship. Execute Lure Protocol Alpha. The Steadfast moved, thrusters flaring. It positioned itself boldly between the incoming probes and the Lumine world. On the surface, in the crystal groves, Keeper Ello and its people felt a tremor in their world song. A discordant, scraping note had entered their system. They gathered, their light dimming slightly. Not with fear, but with focused attention, sending waves of calm energy toward the humans above. The swarm probes were like dark, metallic insects, moving with jagged, efficient speed. They ignored the moons, the asteroids. They saw the planet, a feast of biosignatures, and they saw one ship trying to block the way. As one, they accelerated toward the Steadfast. Hold point defense until they are in range, Mina said, her voice cool. Drone cloud, intercept pattern delta. The cloud of worker drones surged forward, not to fight, but to get in the way. They swarmed around the lead probes, forcing them to adjust course, to slow down. Lasers from the probes sliced through them, turning them into silent puffs of debris. It was a sacrifice of cheap machines to buy seconds. Now, Mina whispered Dot from the surface of the gray moon. Hidden until this moment, 4 kinetic cannons fired. There was no bright laser light. Only the sudden, violent destruction of 2 probes as tungsten rods the size of trees smashed through them at impossible speeds. The remaining probes twisted in space, their focus broken. They began to turn toward this new threat. Reveal the asteroid nest, June ordered Dot from behind the rocky ridge. The human missiles launched. They were slow compared to Concord weapons. The probes saw them easily and moved to evade. But these missiles were not guided by precise targeting computers alone. Mina had slaved them to the Steadfast's main sensor array. She waited, letting the probes dodge, predicting their new paths. Then she detonated the warheads. Space flashed with 4 short-lived suns. The nuclear blasts sent waves of radiation and electromagnetic fury through the vacuum. It was not a surgical strike. It was a bomb in a hallway. 5 more probes were caught in the blasts, their systems fried. The rest were scattered, disoriented. "Now we finish it," June said. All batteries fire at will. The Steadfast's main railguns roared, spitting hypersonic slugs. Her point defense lasers carved the darkness. The remaining probes, damaged and confused, were picked apart. The last one made a desperate dive toward the planet, only to slam into one of Hana's hidden shield domes over a Lumin life node. It shattered against the glowing barrier. Silence returned to the bridge, broken only by the beep of systems and the heavy breathing of the crew. The view screen was full of drifting debris. Mina looked at her scanner. No remaining hostiles. "We did it," Choi Day said from engineering, his voice crackling with disbelief over the comm. "We actually swatted them." On the planet, the Lumin felt the scraping discord fade. Their world song resumed, a note of profound relief and new, deep gratitude woven into it. They had witnessed not just defense, but a ferocious, clever kind of protection they could never have imagined. On the Concord homeworld, the sensor data from the buffer zone was processed. The brief, brutal engagement was clear. The humans' meaningless fortification had destroyed an entire swarm probe cluster without a single loss to the Lumin. Verl and the other senior officials were silent. The seed Eugene had planted began to sprout a tiny, stubborn root. But on the bridge of the Steadfast, Lee Jun looked at the debris, then at the weary but triumphant faces of his crew. He looked at the tactical display, which now showed the massive, undeniable truth. The swarm's main force, a blight of thousands of vessels, had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the system's outer boundary. The victory had been real, but it had also been the first light tap on the door. Now the door was breaking down. "Report," June said, his voice quiet but carrying across the silent bridge. Mina's face was pale as she read the data. Main swarm detected. Estimated over 3,000 capital-grade bioships. They have registered the loss of their probes. They are adjusting course. They are coming here. Ada, 6 hours. The brief hope shattered, replaced by a cold, heavy certainty. They had shown the galaxy they could sting. Now the boot was coming to crush them. The 6 hours passed in a terrible, stretched-out silence. On the bridge of the Steadfast, the initial shock had hardened into a grim resolve. Captain Lee Jun watched the main screen, which now showed a portion of the incoming swarm. It was not a fleet. It was a blot, a moving stain against the starfield. Countless individual ships moving as one terrible organism. Their estimated numbers were beyond any conventional fight. He had known this from the start. He realized. He had just hoped for more time. Commander Park Mina ran the numbers again and again. The tactical solutions were all red lines leading to one conclusion: total annihilation. Their kinetic cannons on the moon would fire a few volleys before being overwhelmed. The asteroid missile nest was a one-shot weapon, now useless against such a spread-out swarm. The Steadfast itself might take a dozen, maybe 24 of the enemy ships with her. It would be a footnote. "We cannot win a battle of attrition," Mina said, her voice flat. "There is no tactical solution available to us." June nodded. "Then we are not fighting a battle. We are holding a position. For as long as we can. Every second we give the Lumin is a second more of their song." In the glowing groves below, Dr. Kim Hana felt the approaching darkness as a physical pressure, a cold weight on her soul. The Lumin around her were dim, their light flickering with a shared dread. Keeper Ello stood beside her, its form less defined, as if drawing inward. "The silence is very close now," Ello's thought voice whispered in her mind. It was filled with a deep, tragic acceptance. "We feel its hunger. You have given us more time than we dreamed." You have shown us a fierce and beautiful kind of music in your defense. But the final note approaches. Hana looked at the gentle beings of light, at the pulsing crystals, the soft moss that glowed beneath her feet. This was not just a culture. It was a living, conscious piece of art, and it was about to be erased. A desperate, insane thought began to form in the back of her mind, born from weeks of studying their biology, their connection to the planet's energy grid. "Keeper," she said slowly, her heart pounding. "You are not just on this world. You are this world. Your song is its energy, correct?" "Yes," Ella replied. "Our thoughts are the pulse in its crystal veins. Our memories are the light in its deep places." "What if," Hana said, choosing her words with the care of a surgeon, "the song had to change? Not to end, but to become a different kind of music, a loud one, a painful one." Ella's light swirled in confusion. To cause pain is not in our nature. To distort our song is a kind of death. To be consumed by the swarm is a definite death, Hannah said, her voice urgent but gentle. Not just for you, but for every tree, every stream, every pulse of energy here. The humans above will die trying to protect the silence. What if you could protect them? She explained her idea. It was not a plan of defense, but of weaponization. Using the Lumin's own psychic network, their symbiotic bond with the planet's geothermal and bioelectric heart, to create a feedback loop. To turn their world song from a melody into a scream. It would use your own life energy as the fuel, Hana finished, her eyes bright with unshed tears. It would hurt you. It would. Dim you? Perhaps for a long time. It would be a violation of everything you are. But it might be a shield. It might save the ones who came to stand with you. Ella was silent for a long time. The other Lumin gathered closer, their colors mingling, a silent conversation flowing between them. Hana could feel the turmoil in the air, the clash between an ancient, peaceful nature and the fierce, new concept of protective sacrifice. On the Steadfast, the first wave of the swarm entered weapons range. "They're ignoring the moons, ignoring the asteroids," Mina reported, her knuckles white on the console. "They're coming straight for the planet. And for us. All batteries, fire at will," June said. "Target the lead ships. Make them pay for every kilometer." Space around the Steadfast became a storm of light and metal. The human ship shuddered as she fired her railguns, her lasers cutting bright lines through the dark. Swarm ships, smaller but countless, exploded under the barrage. But for every one destroyed, 10 more took its place. Energy beams of sickly green lanced out from the swarm, splashing against the Steadfast's shields. The ship rocked violently. "Shield strength at 60%, Choi Day's voice yelled over the din from engineering. "They're focusing fire. We can't take this for long." On the planet, Keeper Ella watched the flashes of light in the sky, the last brave stand of their guardians. It felt the first tentative tendrils of the swarm's presence, a psychic scrape against the world's atmosphere, hungry and cold. The Lumin reached a decision. It was not a unanimous song, but it was a resolved one. "We will learn this new, harsh music," Elo said to Hana, its light firming with a terrible determination. "Show us what we must do. We will not let their song end for nothing." Hana, her hands trembling, pulled out her data slate. She called up the maps of the planetary energy grid, the locations of the major psychic nexus points, the very hearts of the Lumin's world song. "We need to go to the core pulse, the deepest place. And we need to do it now." Above, the Steadfast was dying. A direct hit from a swarm energy beam smashed through the failing shields and tore into the portside engine pod. The ship spun, alarm screaming. "Engine 2 is gone. We're losing power." Choi Day reported, his voice strained. Fire the emergency thrusters. Keep us between them and the planet." June ordered, clinging to his chair as sparks flew from the shattered console. Mina saw the tactical display. They were being surrounded. The swarm was flowing around them like a dark river around a stone. In moments, they would be completely engulfed, and then the path to the planet would be open. "Captain, we're about to be overrun." In the heart of the planet, Hana and Elo stood in a vast, cavernous space. The air hummed with power. The walls were pure, glowing crystal, and in the center pulsed a column of living light, the concentrated song of the Lumine and their world. Other Lumine gathered, linking their forms, adding their light to the central column. "Now," Hana said, her instructions simple. She pointed to key convergence points in the crystal structures. "You must focus your thoughts, not on harmony, but on a single blinding pulse. You must push all your energy, every memory, every note of your song, into the grid at once. It will rebound. It will hurt." The Lumine obeyed. For the first time in their long history, they consciously created discord. They took their serene, flowing song and compressed it, twisted it into a single, screaming note of defiance and protection. The planet began to tremble. On the Steadfast, a new alarm blared. Massive energy surged from the planet. Mina shouted, confusion cutting through her despair. "Off the scale. It's reading like a psychic shockwave." Before June could respond, the world below erupted. It did not explode in fire and rock. It shone. A wave of incandescent light, visible even in the vacuum of space, radiated from the entire surface. It was not just light. It was pure, empathic energy, a tsunami of feeling. It carried the Lumine's love for their world, their sorrow, their fear, and their newfound, ferocious will to protect. This wave hit the swarm. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The swarm ships, connected by a crude hive mind tuned to consume biological and psychic energy, had no defense. The empathic scream was like pouring molten metal into a delicate circuit. The smaller ships simply went dark, their internal connections fried. The larger vessels shuddered, veered off course, and collided with each other in silent, chaotic explosions. The orderly, hungry blot disintegrated into a cloud of confusion and destruction. The wave hit the Steadfast last. The human crew, braced for death, felt a warm, golden light wash over them. It was filled with a profound gratitude and a gentle, apologetic sorrow. The ship's systems flickered but held. The swarm's attack ceased as the enemy armada reeled. June stared at the viewscreen. The swarm was not gone. Hundreds of the largest capital ships, though damaged, still lurked at the edges. But their advance was broken. Their coordination was shattered. The direct path to the planet was now a graveyard of their own vessels. On the surface, in the cavern, the light was dim. The central column pulsed weakly. The Lumine were faded, their forms barely visible, like ghosts. They had spent themselves. Keeper Elo's voice was a whisper in Hana's mind, thin and exhausted. Did it work? Hana, tears streaming down her face, looked at her scanner, then up at the crystal ceiling as if she could see through to the stars. Yes, she whispered. You did it. You stopped them. But as the terrible light faded from the sky, the reality set in. The Steadfast was a wreck, drifting powerless. The Lumine world was scarred, its song reduced to a faint whisper. And the largest swarm ships, though wounded, were beginning to regroup. The reprieve was bought, not won. The garden had burned its own light to drive back the locusts. Now it sat in the dim twilight, vulnerable and waiting. The silence after the storm was deafening. The Steadfast drifted, a broken thing. Most of her systems were dark, and the only light on the bridge came from emergency panels and the cold glow of the stars. Captain Lee Jun pulled himself up from the deck, his head ringing. Around him, his crew was doing the same, moving slowly in the dimness. "Report," he said. His voice a rough scrape. Commander Park Mina was already at the main sensor console, her fingers working on a backup power feed. The screen flickered to life, showing a chaotic mess. Swarm formation is in complete disarray. Countless smaller vessels are dead. The larger capital ships, they're moving, but erratically. They're not advancing. They're just there. On the surface, Dr. Kim Hanna stumbled out of the crystal cavern into the dim light of the Lumin world. The air still hummed, but it was a weak, tired sound. The glowing moss at her feet was faded. The crystalline trees pulsed with a light so faint it was like a memory, and the Lumin themselves were barely visible, translucent wisps of their former selves gathered quietly. Keeper Ello was a faint shimmer, its voice a thread in her mind. "We are here. We are quiet. But we are here." Hannah's medical training took over. She moved among them, her scanner showing critically low energy readings. They were not dying, but they were in a deep, vulnerable stupor. The planet's heartbeat was slow and weak. "You saved us," she whispered to Ello, her throat tight. "You saved everyone." In the cold silence of space, the largest swarm ships began to reorient. Their hive mind was damaged, scrambled by the empathic blast, but the core directive remained: consume. A dozen of the massive, scarred vessels turned their prows slowly, painfully, back toward the planet. The reprieve was ending. A new, sharp tone cut through the quiet on the Steadfast's bridge. Mina stared at her screen. New contacts. Emerging from FTL at the system's edge. Multiple signatures. Concord Drive signatures. June felt a cold knot of dread. Had the Concord come to finish the job? To clean up the mess they considered a violation of their grand strategy? The first ships resolved on the screen. They were not the sleek, powerful dreadnoughts of the Concord Central Fleet. They were a mix, a trio of older Silix warbirds, their feather-like hulls looking sharp and ready. A Grent hive ship, looking like a drifting asteroid covered in moss and sensor pods. A few other vessels from smaller, younger races. And at their head, a single familiar Concord diplomatic cruiser. Its ambassador Yu Jin's ship, Mina said, disbelief in her voice. A communication request flashed. June nodded. Ambassador Yu Jin's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, but her eyes were clear and firm. "Captain Lee Jun, we are monitoring the situation. We see the swarm's dispersal. We also see the remaining threat." "Ambassador," Jun replied, his voice guarded, "have you come to observe the consequences of our disobedience?" "No, Captain," Yu Jin said, a faint, hard smile touching her lips. "I have come to deliver a message, and to deliver reinforcements. The story of what you did here, what you and the Lumin did it spread. It is being called the Stand at the Quiet World, the younger species in the Concord, many of our own people." They questioned. They asked why the calculus of loss cannot include heart. When the sensor data showed the Lumin's sacrifice, it changed minds. We do not have the full Concord fleet. The bureaucrats, like Verl, are still arguing. But we have a task force. Volunteers. We are here to help you finish this. As she spoke, the volunteer fleet moved. It was not a large force, but it was a coordinated one. They positioned themselves between the regrouping swarm capital ships and the planet. They did not attack immediately. They formed a wall, a silent, defiant line in the sand. The lead swarm ship, a monstrous thing covered in organic-looking spines, seemed to assess this new obstacle. It was wounded, its hive mind connections frayed. It hesitated, On the bridge of the Concorde diplomatic cruiser, Yu Jin opened a channel on all frequencies, broadcasting a simple message toward the swarm. And to anyone in the galaxy who might be listening, this is Ambassador Yu Jin of the Galactic Concorde, speaking for the Allied force at the Lumin world. You have witnessed the cost of this world. You have felt its song turn to a shield. We are here to tell you that the shield is now held by more hands. Turn back. This sector is no longer a buffer. It is guarded. The swarm capital ship did not turn back. With a last desperate surge of its terrible hunger, it powered forward, green energy building at its prow. The volunteer fleet opened fire. It was not the clean, surgical strike of Concorde doctrine. It was a barrage of different weaponry Silex plasma casters, Grent sonic disruptors, human missiles launched from the few remaining tubes on the Steadfast as engineer Choi Day got auxiliary power online. It was messy, loud, and united. The swarm ship, already wounded, was torn apart under the concentrated fire. Its death throes lit up the void. The other capital ships, seeing the destruction of their leader and facing an organized defense where they expected none, finally broke. Their damaged hive mind could not compute this new variable. One by one, they turned, lumbering away into the deeper dark, retreating to lick their wounds. The immediate threat was over. Weeks later, the scene in the Lumin system was one of slow, steady repair. A proper Concorde medical and engineering fleet had finally arrived, authorized by a Concorde council that could no longer ignore the political and moral shift the humans had sparked. They bathed the damaged Steadfast in tractor beams, preparing to tow her to a orbiting dock for repairs. On the planet, the light was returning. Slowly, Dr. Kim Hana worked side by side with Concorde xenobiologists, guiding them in techniques to gently nourish the Lumin and their world back to health. The Lumin remained faint, but their song was growing stronger each day, now intertwined with a new, resilient melody of gratitude and hard-won peace. A formal ceremony was held in the main crystal grove. Captain Lee Jun, his arm in a sling, stood with his crew. Before them stood Keeper Elo, brighter now, and Ambassador Yu Jin, a senior Concorde official, not virile but a newer, younger appointee, addressed them. His words broadcast across the Concorde. The actions taken here have redefined guardianship, the official said. The Lumin world is now a protected Concorde sanctuary, under the joint stewardship of the Concorde and the people of Earth. The buffer zone policy is under permanent review. He turned to June. Captain, your people have a saying, I am told. To stand between the innocent and the storm. You did more. You taught the storm itself to hesitate. And you reminded the galaxy that strength is not just in the power to destroy, but in the will to protect what others have forgotten. Later, June stood with his officers on the observation deck of a Concorde ship, looking down at the world they had refused to abandon. It glowed softly, a jewel once again. They'll write about this, you know, Mina said quietly. As the galaxy turned away, humans rose. It wasn't just us, June interrupted, his eyes on the planet. It was the Lumin's courage. It was Yu Jin's diplomacy. It was those volunteers who finally decided to turn their ships around. We just held the line first. Choi Day grinned. We held it with old guns and stubbornness. And now, Hannah said, her voice full of a quiet wonder, as she watched a pulse of brighter light travel through the planetary forest below. The song continues. A little different. A little stronger. They've added our stubbornness to their melody. They stood in silence for a long time, watching the gentle light of the forgotten world that was forgotten no more. It was a quiet victory, paid for in pain and sacrifice, but it was a real one. They had not won a war, but they had guarded a single precious note in the galaxy's song, and in doing so, They had made the entire chorus change its tune.